rend les choses faciles.
For this DIY doghouse, you will need a Kreg, some pocket hole screws, an electric drill, and some wood glue. We're going to start with building the base of the bed, and for that you'll need to cut down a 4x4 into 4 chunky legs. I chose to do them at 5.5 inches, and then you'll cut down a 2x4 into 2 25-inch pieces and 2 17-inch pieces. I assembled those pieces as you see here with the chunky legs on the outside and the longer pieces of wood connecting to the sides of it, and that's where the Kreg drill is going to come in handy because it's going to be able to make these like side screw areas to screw into the chunky legs, but it will keep it very secure. Using a Kreg seems kind of complicated, but it's not. You're just going to adjust it to the thickness of the wood that you are drilling into, and then you're going to clamp that to the end of the piece, which you want to like screw directly into the other piece of wood. I repeated that on each side of the framing of the wood, and I didn't do it to the chunkier pieces of wood because we're not screwing that into the longer pieces. It's going to make sense in a second, I promise. Now you're going to line those holes up and add some wood glue to each side where the wood is connecting, and then you're going to screw it directly into the legs of the frame. After you put this frame together, the surface of what you can cover is actually 24 inches by 32, so I had a scrap piece of plywood on hand that I cut down to size, and I just wood glued it and screwed it to the top. I am actually going to take this off later in the video because I changed my mind how I wanted to execute her doghouse, but if you just want to build a simple base for a dog bed, this is one way to do it. One tip that is new to me actually, and I learned the hard way, is I never used outdoor screws before on outdoor projects and would end up rusting, so make sure you're using the proper screws if you're letting this live outside. Also, I did decide to add a middle beam to the bottom of the frame because when my 45-pound bulldog sleeps on it, I didn't want it to end up bowing over time, and I didn't use a Kreg drill for this. I actually just drilled it in from the outside. After all of this, I realized I didn't sand any of the pieces down individually, so I had to sand it down as a whole, which I really don't suggest, but because she's only touching the top, I didn't freak out too much. I just wanted to make sure that this thing was completely smooth. That way when she lays down or walks by it, you don't want them to get splinters. Let me know in the comments down below if any of you guys have a shock rag, but I've had this guy for about 2 years and I always lay him down before I try to stain or paint anything because I'm way too lazy to bring it outside. So I went ahead and stained it like a whitewash, which ended up looking not how I expected. I'm going to end up painting this white, but before I show you that, I'm going to show you how I made the actual house portion of this whole situation. I cut 2 19.5-inch pieces, one straight edge, one with a 22.5-degree angle, and then I cut 2 16 3/4 pieces with a matching 22.5-degree angle, but at the top where they meet, it's a 45-degree angle. I made all of these angled cuts with my miter saw, which is one of my favorite power tools, and I'll link to another video that I've used a miter saw in before so you can see a little bit more in depth about it. But then I'm also going to use the Kreg to connect these pieces, and I only need to connect them in 3 areas. Don't freak out about those markings, just use a little patience and 80 grit sandpaper on your sander and those will disappear real quick. Add some wood glue to where the wood meets and then drill it in with your pocket hole screws. You're going to repeat that whole process one more time so you have 2 of these frames. In order to attach these to make sure they aren't going to wobble and like flip backwards and all of that jam, I wanted to go through the bottom of the plywood piece, so I had to remove that in order to do that step. So I had to kind of work backwards, but this is the process of learning as you go. I flipped that plywood piece over so you could see the bottom of it and pre-drilled 2 holes and then screwed my longer outdoor screws through the bottom of the plywood into the actual frame that we just created, keeping it on the edges, and I repeated that to both of them, and you should have something that looks like this. I shimmied the frame back underneath the doghouse and I just screwed in where I screwed before, to be honest, and that worked out perfectly because it secured it nice and snug. This started looking so much better than I envisioned, but now we need to connect the pieces with dowels that you're going to cut down to size, and you can use a handsaw for this because dowels aren't too aggressive at all. I cut down 5 dowels and I ensured that they fit in between each of those little angles that I wanted, and then I just traced where I wanted them to be. I pre-drilled a hole to make sure I could screw from the opposite side into the dowel. I repeated that to all 5 of my dowels, and then It just looks so good. You're gonna paint or stain it whatever color you want, or you can leave it as is, but you do need to treat it for the weather if it's living outside. I decided to paint it white and then seal it with a weather sealant. For the summertime, I wanted a more lightweight wall, so I decided to DIY a little piece of fabric that was a little bit longer on each side to cover the entire thing, because I'm actually going to do a suggestion you guys told me when I did my DIY dog tent video and add some Velcro to the very end to make it so I can easily remove it, change the patterns, or when it gets to colder weather, I can create some DIY walls to hook onto the dowels and take that fabric off. I used some super gnarly adhesive Velcro that actually can attach without using hot glue or fabric glue, and then I just kind of stuck it together and then pressed it as tight as I could to the opposite side of the fabric to create a little sleeve. Now all you have to do is put it wherever you want it to live, add your little mattress piece, which actually I got custom cut from Joann's. They're having a 70% off their foam right now, and I just wrapped around a blanket that I could easily wash, and I wouldn't get too mad if it got upset or if it got dirty. Callie is not too sure about this thing per usual, but she'll end up loving it when she realizes it's just her space. Hope that you guys enjoyed this build as much as I did. Honestly, I am brand new to woodworking, but I'm figuring it out as I go. So if you have any suggestions down below as to how to make this better, like I always say, sharing is caring. It is not my way or the highway. I am so excited to see what you guys would do with your doghouse.
How can I help you? Hi. Hi, baby. Okay, back to this.
And also, if you do not know, I am having a giveaway if you are subscribed to my channel, which I can check, so make sure you're subscribed. Comment and tag 3 people on my last Instagram photo, and I will pick a winner for a private DIY conversation later tonight. I'll see you Sunday with another DIY.